Shapiro.
All right, Ben Shapiro. Yeah, so Ben Shapiro is a conservative talking head. He's Jewish, and he's definitely on more of that right-leaning political ideology. He's well known for doing speaking engagements at colleges, doing a lot of Q&A with people, and also doing podcasts and interviews. But let's just say a lot of the time he has some pretty hot takes on certain things, whether it's because of his religious background or his political beliefs. Sometimes I really agree with him. Sometimes I'm like, hell to the no, Ben, like you're getting it wrong.
It's interesting that we take all sorts of different ideologies and we can understand them. Because, like, you think of boho hobo and you might think of, like, in reference to, like, hippie movement kind of thing. But at the end of the day, like, we can understand all different types of perspectives. And it's kind of cool to be able to find that common ground.
I like to think that we talked about this one early on, but a big thing that we want to do, or an end goal with boho hobo, is to really bridge the gap or of the divide that, at least in our country, that has been formed in the last like 5 years, with the incumbent president, Donald Trump, and then just kind of like the state of society right now. There's a lot of differing beliefs that are very polar opposite of each other, and a lot of like butting heads. And whether that's violence that occurs or a lot of nothing progressive happening, like I really want our...
That was honestly around the same time of when Trump got elected. That's when we started
boho hobo. Yeah,
and I think a lot of that was like rooting in like this fear of like what's to come in society, and then like us taking the responsibility of like, wow, we can like make a difference with this platform, with this idea, and yeah, maybe we can find this way to like bridge the gap.
That's really why we really want to cover all sorts of topics, because that's a big issue I've personally identified. I don't want to like go off onto a huge tangent, but when it comes to hot topics, politics, religion, you name it, people get in these like bubbles where they're like, I can't talk about it because I'm uncomfortable, or you may have a differing belief and I don't want to get into a fight. And I think that's the wrong mentality to be going into that and thinking about it. It should be the opposite. Yeah, it's like society is fear-mongering a lot, so you're afraid of having a disagreement.
Well, that's the news.
Right.
The only thing you ever hear is about bad things.
Yeah, instead of a disagreement, though, it should be an understanding of the opposite belief. And instead
Agree to disagree.
Right, and instead of being like, no, what you're saying is wrong, it should be, okay, I hear you, and now I'm going to try to understand why you feel that way. And then I'm going to tell you why I feel this way, and then at the end of the day, like, as long as we respect each other's points of views, to an extent, obviously if someone's being super radical, you may not actually respect their point of view, which is valid. But I think one way we can get closer to bridging that gap is just by starting by going into any type of conversation with the intention of understanding and bridging the gap, and not trying to continue to polarize situations.
So I do want to say that I think as humans, our human nature is that we kind of have to have conflict. We have to have something to go against. And that kind of, by going against that other thing, by having that conflict, the people in the in crowd that are against that thing kind of band together. It's like this collective, the idea of like the groupthink mentality, I think that's a part of human nature. So moving forward in our society, I think one thing that we can all fear and that can bring humanity together is things of like artificial intelligence or automation taking all of our jobs away. And I think, as an aside, that's what Andrew Yang is trying to propose. And that's finding a common enemy that we can all band together as humans and go against, and watch out for one another.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, people like to scapegoat issues on other groups of people, typically groups of people that have nothing to do with the actual reason that an issue is happening. And so that's why there's been such polarization going on for any reasons. People are losing their jobs and they're trying to blame someone, whatever it is. And so by actually just blaming the root cause of the issue and everyone kind of coming to an understanding and agreement of that is really, I know it's idealistic, but any way we can get closer to that, I think is positive. So anyways, we found this video. It's Tai Lopez, who is kind of like a sham entrepreneur who became...
Before we go into this, to piggyback off of what you're saying, one thing that I wrote down today is the one thing that both sides of the political parties can agree on is that they both want freedom. And that really resonated in me, like the idea of like, yeah, everyone is fearing feel that they might not be able to have their job tomorrow, or their family's going to be at risk of like in these situations where they're not going to have food and shelter. So just a little add on to that.
This video is Tai Lopez with Ben Shapiro, and they're talking about becoming an entrepreneur. Tai Lopez is someone who became like a famous entrepreneur for basically selling like these high ticket courses or whatever that people would pay thousands of dollars for to get rich quick, essentially. And he kind of did it first as being like, this is something a lot of entrepreneurs, digital entrepreneurs have done, is they basically lie about their successes, get people hooked on the idea of this person being able to help them become their next millionaire. And then by actually convincing people to buy these courses, enough people, they actually do become a millionaire, and then they from there are able to like justify why they were saying it. So that's just giving you like my kind of understanding of who Tai Lopez is. And also, like, I don't know, Tai Lopez isn't really like a role model to me personally, but it's just funny that he's on this talking about entrepreneurship. And then I already talked about Ben Shapiro, so just get into that.
It's literally faking it until you make it.
Yeah, 100%.
And just leveraging off of other people until you can get to the top.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother topic, but I'm not even going to get into it.
Probably true for my parents.
Yeah. So now you've grown up, went to school, did kind of the college thing. Now you're an entrepreneur. You've got, your shows. Let's talk about business. What have you learned in business? What's the number one thing, if you could go back, when did you really start in terms of the business of talking about politics? How long ago?
Well, I mean, I've been writing about politics as a pundit since I was 17. So
Yeah.
so literally now half my life,
Yeah.
I've been doing this. But as far as kind of running businesses
Yeah.
and all of that, last 5 years, basically.
So if you could go back right now, time machine, we're back in 2013, what are you going to tell younger Ben about running a business profitably? What's the biggest mistakes you're like, do not do this?
I think forcing it. I mean,
Okay.
really, I think that the business opportunities tend to present themselves, and when they do, it's a short window, so you have to jump on them. But very often, what I would do, I know from personal experience, I would have an idea, and I'd be like, you know what, this is a great idea, and I wouldn't do necessarily proper market research. I wouldn't actually, think through all of the various angles on it. I'd be like, okay, let's do it. Let's do
Yeah.
it, because now's the time to make my money. We're going to go, and we're going to do it, and force this through. And very rarely does it work that way. Usually it's an opportunity that opens and you just take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's most of life actually, is that opportunity comes along, you have to be able to spot it when it comes, but most of us are me for a long time, most of us are so focused on what we want from the universe that we fail to recognize when the universe is presenting something to us.
Yeah.
And I think that if you just leave yourself sort of open to the opportunities that come along, then you jump on the opportunities that do, you're likely to do a lot better. Like the business that we started at Daily Wire, that only came about because my business partner Jeremy Boring and I were both fired from a 501c3.
So being fired was one of the good days of your life then?
Oh yeah, I mean.
So the idea of not trying to force an idea, the idea of just allowing the process to happen, being more mindful of the opportunities that are presented and capitalizing on those opportunities instead of trying to create those opportunities from nothing. And to relate that to us, I think a lot of the times we have all these big ideas, like we're constantly talking about like what we could potentially do in the future, that we get kind of lost in just like what is happening in the now, making the most of what is presented in front of us.
Yeah. I think, and I mean, he's saying that he learned that in the young stages of being an entrepreneur. And I think that we can relate a lot to that, as maybe in the most recent months, we've started to shift our ways of thinking about what we're doing in more of a practical sense and less in the big idea realm, because when we started, it really was like all these big ideas all the time. And recently it's become more of a honed idea of like what we are, what we're doing. And we're starting to able to actually like execute on these ideas because we've solidified what we're doing.
So the one big idea that has held true this entire time is our why. And Simon Sinek, he's talked about the why, and he's been on TED Talks. And basically the why is like, what can you do and how that is going to beneficially impact humanity or the community at large. So our why is to seek perspective to understand the human experience.
Yeah.
And that's very open-ended, and we have multiple whys, but that's the big overarching one. So understand your why, and yeah, we have all these different ideas, and probably 99% of those ideas we never actually executed on because we're either A, we don't have the capital means to be able to carry that idea out, or B, we have other things that are taking up our time that we don't actually have the ability to execute on.
Yeah, I think one thing we did do right, and maybe other people can relate to this, is because we are younger entrepreneurs, we haven't really
I'm 23. No, I'm 24.
Yeah,
Shit.
and I'm almost 24. But when we started way back in 2016, I was 21. You were still 21 at the time. So we were pretty young to be getting ourselves into any type of entrepreneurship.
Looking back, I think we could have been younger. Like, it would have been better for us to be younger.
Yeah,
It's always good to start early.
That's hindsight, though. I mean, the fact that we started at 21 speaks a lot, but the thing of it is that we were so young, we didn't even have the means to do a lot of these ideas anyway. So I think potentially we saved ourselves from potential failure right off the bat by not being able to actually execute on some of these bigger ideas. Because if we did have the funds, we may have like crash and burn on ideas, which maybe is a good thing to experience that, but maybe not. Maybe we wouldn't be doing business still today if we crashed hard enough. I don't know.
Well, there is something to the effect of taking lines of credit out. You put yourself in a position where you have to obviously repay those debts, and it takes time to build the capital, be able to repay those things. And also, it puts us in a position where we have to personally develop. Like, we're growing as the business grows, and maybe our ideas are overreaching or overextending us personally, and we're not ready for that. So it's like trying to force the business to grow at this accelerated rate when us personally aren't able to handle that responsibility of the business.
Plus, we were both in college, so I just think based on where we're at now, it was good that we weren't able to execute on a lot of things, and it made us spend more time focusing on why we're doing anything in the first place and how we're going to make whatever we are going to end up doing in the long run sustain in the long run.
Yeah, another thing that I want to point out is when you start up a business, you have to create like this business model and your mission statement, vision, values, and all of that. So for us, that was a constant looking back, constant analyzing of what we're doing now. Like, it wasn't like we started off with a set in stone business model and then we executed. No, the way we did it was a constant building process. So it was always like, we would have little missions that we completed, and then we would always like come together and talk about like what we've accomplished and where we want to go in the future. And as we developed, the business developed, and the mission and values came out of that. And so it was literally like probably a good 2.5 years when we fully came to the realization of like, oh yeah, this is our mission, this is what we want to do with the business, with our lives, and do it in a way that is able to give back to society.
Yeah, like be willing to say no to ideas that sound good but maybe aren't realistic and think more practical, and then give yourself time to really think about why you're doing something and what value that idea is really going to bring to the the ideal consumer market, whatever it may be that you're trying to do.
One like priceless value of entrepreneurship is that it kind of puts you in an environment where it forces you to think introspectively about why you're doing what you're doing, because entrepreneurship is tough, man. Like, you have to have passion, you have to have drive to be able to accomplish what it is that you want to do. and you're always going through these existential crises, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? This sucks. This is rough. But at the end of the day, it's like, if I'm doing it, at the end of the day, you might be able to conjure up this reason. And the more you stay in the pits of like struggle, the more that reason why you're doing it builds and builds.
Yeah. Well said. I don't know. We're not really like saying anything negative about what Ben Shapiro is saying. I think we're just agreeing with what he said. I don't really have anything to say against what he's saying so far.
No, it's pretty fair.
Yeah, which is surprising to me because usually I have questions about it, but.
And I have a rule in my family. I buy a house, I get a mortgage, and then I quit a job. So we weren't fired. So we bought a house.
Did your wife had a heart attack?
No, she'd been through it 2 or 3 times by that point, so she was used
like,
to it.
Oh, it's just Ben going through the cycle.
Exactly, but because of that, we had proposed a business idea to this 501c3, and they rejected it, and we said, okay, fine, we're out. And then we took that business idea around in the marketplace, found some investors, and in 2 years have built a website that has 100 million page views a month and a
Is that
podcast.
what you're at, 100 million?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And that, I would say, we spoke on the bad of America, but that's the best of America, because I've traveled around the world, and no place that I've been is as entrepreneurial in terms of people I meet that just go, okay, I failed here, pick myself up, and start again. Like other countries, like in Europe, for example, bankruptcy is like it's like a scarlet letter. Mm-hmm. If you at one point in America, it's almost a badge of honor to be able to say, I'm bankrupt, and that's some of the good things about America, don't you?
All right, I just want to say I don't like his input so far.
Tai or Ben?
Tai. Like, bankrupting shit is not that's not like a badge of honor.
It would be interesting to hear like what context really he's coming from in that sense.
Like, the first person I think of when it comes to bankruptcy is Donald Trump. And let me tell you that everything I've listened to or seen about Donald Trump as a business person tells me that he's a bad business person because he is yet to have a successful business, that he didn't somehow find a way to fuck it up. Yeah, financially.
I think the idea of the bankruptcy is like overextending yourself when you're not ready to, like what we were talking about
You're
before.
Doing too much. You did something that caused the business as a whole to collapse to the point where you have to save your own self so that you're not like fucking up your personal assets.
Yeah, and at the same time, all the people in that organization are at the detriment of your own vision, of your own mode of doing.
So, like, I don't think that every person who's in a business that fails goes into bankruptcy. That's the other thing. Like,
so
a lot of people cut their losses before it's that messed up.
I can visualize, like, the concept of what we're talking about, but it's hard for me to put in words. I'll try my best. But, like, what we're doing right now is we're not taking lines of credit out. We're just simply using the money that we already are making in our jobs and putting that towards what it is that we want to be doing with the business. It's not lavish. We're definitely living pretty minimalist for the most part. We're really just trying to hone in and develop our own personal skills. And when you do it that way, we're always in check of like how much money we have, how much money we can invest. And it's a gradual process. And I think that builds that foundation you need to have like that exponential growth later on in an entrepreneurial in a business.
So I guess for me, I sorry, I just got a little heated, but like, yes, the reason that there's more entrepreneurial people here than anywhere else is because we literally live in the like gold standard of free market capitalism. Like,
so we have free money to expend.
Like,
in a sense that like we are not taking the responsibility of
you can just declare bankruptcy and then it's not your issue anymore.
Yeah, there is a level of
we live in a world where there's literally businesses that are too big to fail. If they go bankrupt, the entire country, society itself would implode if someone wasn't to more or less wipe away the issues that are going to be caused because of
what are those
the
companies
the banks. If insurance companies, like private insurance companies, went bankrupt, that would fuck things up.
Oh, so I see what you're saying. So you're trying to establish the idea that okay, bankruptcy is not a good idea. At the end of the day, the government will probably have to bail out that business.
I guess what I'm saying is that yes, we live in a place where you can declare bankruptcy and more or less like wipe away the issues.
It shouldn't be the golden
But
standard,
like,
though.
I don't agree with Tai Lopez is saying that it's a badge of honor, because it's not. At least not in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think, but like,
Is he talking about like a badge of honor if you like lose it all and then you rise up from the
yeah,
ashes?
maybe, but still, like, people aren't gonna want to invest in someone who's had like 3 bankrupt like business ideas. Like, to me, that's like, I'm probably not gonna get a good ROI on whatever you're doing.
Makes sense.
Like, I wouldn't want to invest in anything Donald Trump does, because literally professionals have said that with the like money that he inherited, he would be a richer man today if he'd never done anything in business and just invested his money into other stuff.
Really? Wow.
They literally, because he's bankrupt so many companies.
That's like literally the Kardashians, for instance. Like, their mom is just like a multi-millionaire, and they come out of the womb, and what's her name? But
Kylie?
No, the mom.
Chris,
she just hands them millions of dollars, and she's like, all right, start up a business. And they do. And I mean, Kylie, she's successful, but that's because she has the social following. But like, they don't have any business background. They're so early in the game. They're probably having other people do it for them.
Yeah, they're like the face of
money.
what's going on, and they have the money, but I'm sure there's other people pulling strings to make sure that it like
But if it
doesn't fuck up.
But like, let's say if she had $1 million to start a business, and it was an entrepreneur, like sole proprietorship.
She was the only person running
one.
it. Who's to say that that would work out?
She might have went bankrupt.
Yeah, that was my whole point. I just like, I'm not catching my. This is the classic Tai Lopez like reactions too. Even like his input on what Ben Shapiro is saying so far is like not really tasteful in terms of like what I would say reaction to what Ben's saying. Like, he's almost like trying to be entertaining, and Ben Shapiro's just like saying like
Facts.
things like matter of fact, and it's just a very weird dynamic for me.
Wish there was. That's what I wish. If I had this machine, anybody here can design this machine, please let me know. I will invest all my money in it. A machine, it's called the Combinder. And it combines the greatest. So let's say you want to marry somebody. You remember being on a date with Susie, Jennifer, and Holly. You take the best out of all 3 of them. This one had the best personality. This one you liked how they looked. This one was the nicest. And you merge them into one human. We also need that for countries. Because as traveling around the world, I love America. I was born here, and I feel patriotic. But once in a while, I go to certain countries, and I was like, I wish we had that in America. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I'm hoping that even though I think mass media in some ways is the death of the world, it also has this light in that we now learn what they're doing in Scotland and in Manchuria or whatever. You know, I mean, there is that kind of thing. What would you combine?
What did that have to do with anything that was being said?
Yeah, I'm pretty lost. It seemed irrelevant. But I mean, I think Tai Lopez is, like you said, he's coming from it from an entertaining perspective, not taking this interview very seriously. I don't think he takes Ben Shapiro seriously.
Well, you just noticed he didn't look at Ben Shapiro the entire time he was talking. He was looking at the people filming and stuff. He was like interacting with like his like people.
So he's just like trying to give off that sense of clout or whatever. But like Tai Lopez, he seems like he's condescending to Ben Shapiro in a way. Like, he thinks he's better than him, maybe. And that might be why he's not taking him seriously. But that's just a guess.
It was just a weird, like, they were talking about business and has now caveated completely away from it to this Combinder idea.
Which I don't even understand.
All right, let's continue.
From outside of the United States, what's another country that you go, yes, we need some of that here?
Well, I mean, just because I'm not as familiar with a lot of the countries as you are, I would say the Israeli educational system is quite good.
Okay.
And one of the things they do is they track people once you hit 18. Okay. So once you hit 16 or 17, they say...
Sorry, I have to stop again. Of course he would pick Israel. He's Jewish.
Makes sense.
But yes.
That's fair to say.
What do you want to do? And if you're in an engineering track, they put you in an engineering track. You're not going and studying general theory at college.
Right.
You're already moving along those lines, and I think that is a really good thing.
Yeah.
I think that there's a certain sense of citizenry that exists in certain countries. I feel like again, I'll use Israel as an example. There's a sense of citizenry in the country that people feel like they owe something to the country that I think is not a bad thing. And that's because Israel's constantly under danger, and the United States is not under fire ever. So we sort of feel like, okay, we live here, this is where we are, but what do we owe to the country? That's not really in evidence here, I think, quite as much. But listen, I think that America is, by most measures, the best thing going. I think look, there's certain aspects of how government is done in other places that, like, for example, I'm not a big fan of the jury system. I think I think the European criminal justice system, where you actually have a judge who's a professional judge who sits there, and it's not necessarily a system where you have a prosecutor and a defense lawyer. It's actually just the court trying to get to the truth. I'm not sure that's a worse system than our jury system, for example. But I mean, overall, we're the most powerful country in the history of the planet for a lot of very good reasons, I think.
I think the reason why we're so powerful in our sense of the word powerful is that we have money and we're built on a capitalistic backbone that provides the means of efficiency to advance our technology and also give us these opportunities to the people that other countries might not have. I think overall, we are powerful, but like he was saying, I don't think we have any culture really to America. And if we do have culture, I think it's like lost. It's like we have the forefathers and what they stood for, and that's kind of continuing on in our Constitution. But a sense of culture as far as like with a certain type of dance or music or like festivities that go on that we uphold, I think that traditional sense has been lost.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, in the long-term game of the United States, like, we are a melting pot of all cultures, so it's hard to be a unified culture behind one idea, like one tradition, idea, culture, because there's so many influencing cultures that, like, people are still following the cultures of their previous country. And I've thought about this a lot, but one thing that I personally believe in is that I don't think there should be countries the size of the United States or Russia or China, because there's so many differing beliefs within that size of a country, so many different types of people, that it almost doesn't make sense for them to all be under the same, like, laws.
But also at the same time,
but that elicits itself to, like, say all the states in the United States became individual countries. That means a state like Alabama could then make sweeping abortion laws, making it impossible for people to, get access to healthcare, or, females. I shouldn't even just make it about abortion, just like the whole Planned Parenthood thing, and them being like, we're not going to let that be a thing anymore, and we'll literally put you into jail if you, like, any of these things happen. Like, that would then be law, because the state would be a country and its government would be the only thing it has to, like, answer to.
I think if all the states were their own countries, it would just create a further divide in our... Well, at that point, you wouldn't think of it as countries, but the neighboring countries, it would create divide in, I think, to a more extreme level.
But I mean, think about it. Like, Europe is a European Union, but they still allow the individual countries to, like, think for themselves and, like, figure out their own issues and ideas.
But also at the same time, that's what...
It's an idea.
That's what kind of makes our country beautiful. Even though we don't have this tradition or anything that is, like, binding us all together, maybe we do, in the sense of, like, we're all, to a certain extent, open-minded to other cultures because of how much of the melting pot we are. Maybe more so than other countries.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just generalizing, but we in this country have a pretty big problem when it comes to, like, accepting anyone who doesn't want to abide by, like, the Christian, white, Anglo-Saxon view of life.
I mean, that's fair to say, yeah. And I mean, if you take all these different backgrounds, I think that is just gonna happen.
Yeah, but
like
when?
The scapegoating or whatever. Yeah, but like, yeah. So you're saying, like, when is
for
that
200 years, the United States has consistently suppressed and, like, been aggressive against any cultural views that weren't those of the original, like, people who moved here.
I think we've advanced, obviously. I mean, those racial segregation laws have been dismantled. But also, I think the media has a lot of control in how our minds are formulated in that idea of our divide. I think the media depending on which network you go through, whether it's Fox or CNN, they tell you what you want to hear, but how much of the truth is there to what they're saying? Are they only trying to make fear in a certain political ideology because it helps their bottom dollar and helps pursue their agenda? Who knows?
I mean, it's kind of obvious. Ratings matter to them, so they're going to say what they need to say to get people to watch. So,
but at the end of the day, like, you go out in the street of New York City and there's so many different cultures running around, and it's not like we're having wars out in the middle of the street. We're still able to coexist to a certain extent. I guess it just kind of depends on what you're feeding your brain, what kind of media you're looking at.
I guess my interpretation is, yes, America's been great to me personally, but I'm not going to sit here and deny the reality of what our society is. And it's not what you see in the news all the time. Like, there's a lot of shit that they don't talk about that's really messed up about our country, or like what our country is influencing in other parts of the world. So
that's true.
I just don't want to sit here and tout like they are, or at least Ben Shapiro, that like the United States is the best shit since sliced bread. Because it's really like, I don't even think there is a country that's like, let me reverse that. I think there is maybe a country out there that is like the gold standard, but it's in such a small scale, right? Like, countries, when I think of countries that get it right, it's like, not even saying this because I'm a white person, but like Scandinavian countries really have it down. New Zealand really has it down.
Have you lived there?
I haven't, but this is just based on research and looking into how they run certain parts of their societies. And like, great, it works there. But also, look at the size of those countries and then compare it to the United States. They're the size of a fucking state.
But at the same time, you don't know what the truth is. You're just taking hearsay from something else that's communicating.
No, I mean, it's pretty much like fact-based on people like living in those countries comparing it to what we do. And they're like, well, yeah, we do it this way and we don't have that problem. I'm not saying they don't have their own problems, but when it comes to like things I'm personally thinking about, like violence and oppression and things like that, these countries don't have those issues because they've done things to fix them.
But also because of like how the capitalistic machine is, like maybe in the now it's bad, but like in the future maybe we'll end up winning out because like we have more technological advancement because of capitalism.
Yeah, but what does technological advances gonna guarantee? Is that really gonna guarantee that we're gonna be better off, or is it gonna mean that we're closer to our own demise?
That's a good point too. And with artificial intelligence coming out, we might be at our demise.
I mean, you literally made the point that as a human race, we are actually going more inward than we are going outward because it's easier to actually go inward than outward based on technology.
So what we mean by that is instead of like traveling light years away to different planets, we're developing inward. So what that means is like developing our own intelligence through technology, scientific advancements, artistic creations. As a human race, a species, so to speak, we're creating our own opportunities through technological advancements in like maybe virtual reality, artificial intelligence, blockchain. I don't want to get too deep here, but the idea of like making planet Earth at this point of digitization where we're creating like virtual worlds in it of itself instead of trying to travel to other worlds out there.
Yeah, and I don't know. That's kind of like, it's like very off of the initial thing, but it's just like, I don't know.
Tangent.
I guess my input on the whole thing is that like, I personally don't think that the United States is like the best place. I'm just kind of like disagreeing with what Ben Shapiro said. And like, but I do agree with the fact that there is this like lack of patriotism going on. As time has gone on, people have become less patriotic about the country because we've never had to. People always say like, oh, we have our military out there fighting for our right and our freedom. But it's like, how many times has someone actually realistically tried to like attack the United States? One, obviously it would be a dumb idea because our military is so much bigger than every other military. I get that. Mm-hmm. We're always fighting somewhere else.
Yeah,
so
I think
like,
it comes down to we have nothing to fight for this country. I think everyone's out for themselves and they're just trying to like have this independent gain, and whatever beliefs that hold true to them they're going to support. And that's why we have this divide. There's no
common enemy.
There's no common enemy, and there's no culture in America that is prominent enough that binds us together. Like, you look at Cuban culture, and they have salsa, and they have these like festivities and like this sense of like common enemy or common purpose towards an enemy, which could be Fidel Castro, and that brings the culture together for us.
But also, to my point, look at the size of Cuba and compare it to the United States.
That's a good point.
I really think at the end of the day, one of the biggest issues with our country is the size of land, the amount of land that we have. There's a reason why there's only a few countries that are this size, and most are much smaller.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm getting really like off on this, but like as a country, we didn't even acquire that land in a ethical way anyways. So like we literally displaced an entire population of human beings who had lived here for thousands of years before us. And then we eradicated them.
We eradicated them and glorified the pioneers in creating this country.
Right. We literally glorified the people who were part of the problem. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, think twice about saying that the United States is like the best shit, and think really deeply about like all of the factors that caused the United States to be what it is today.
And that's where entrepreneurs like us come in and we fix problems. Like, that is what we are out to do.
We just want to
observe problems and try to fix them.
I just think at the end of the day, like, one great thing about this country is that we have the ability to be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of resources available to help you like find your way in entrepreneurism. But
I think there's two paths you can go down with entrepreneurialism. There's the path that you're trying to make financial gain, and then there's more like the social activists that are trying to create these like economic machines or these organizations that are able to solve a problem for humanity and bring common good.
And I think that by having that ability, some of us are going to go down on the right side of the history books because we're going to be the ones who like help to make a better name for the United States.
Yeah. Personally.
So that's my opinion. But overall, I guess like my reflection on that video, very weird, honestly, pick. But
are we done?
Yeah, that was the end of the video. Tai Lopez literally gave zero fucks about Ben Shapiro, especially at the end. He literally looked like disinterested.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if this needs to be apologized for, but like, we review these videos and yeah, we are having our honest opinion and insights on the video, but we tend to tangent off and just have our own conversations. So just knowing Andy and I, we're probably going to do that a lot. So if you're not into that, then you don't have to watch.
You just gave the people permission to stop watching. If you've been just dying watching this for the last like 40 minutes, we're sorry.
if you came to this video to watch Ben Shapiro and what he has to say and an analytical approach, you're not getting it. It's mostly like us just igniting our minds.
It's creating topics for us to do a podcast. That's all it is.
But yeah, check out the video. It was sick.
I mean, they literally watched the video while we reacted to it. But yeah, if you really want the link, we can give you the link to watch Tai Lopez and Ben Shapiro talk. But
alright, good.
Yeah.
Somebody once told me that the grass is greener. Somebody once told me if you scream they hear ya. Somebody once told me never fight the feeling. Funny thing is, yeah, I always believe it. Yeah. Somebody once told me that the grass is greener. Somebody once told me if you scream they hear ya.